Anything would be easier on my voice at this point.
You got to wear the star glasses when you do that.
Oh, I love Bootsy. We are live, and we are waiting for people to get connected. And let's see if we've got anybody in the chat room. We have Facebook is going online. YouTube is going online. Hello, Periscope. Still 2 people clinging desperately to the dying form that is Periscope. If you're watching on Periscope, Google's getting ready to, or Twitter's getting ready to shut that down. So you might want to look into that. Other places to watch us are at facebook.com/Scott Sigler, youtube.com/Scott Sigler, twitch.tv/Scott Sigler, and now on LinkedIn. Yeah, I got streaming going on LinkedIn. Okay. We're trying to get Discord hooked up, but I don't get it. Simon, Tracy, hello everybody.
Hey, Brian.
Nelson,
hey, Nelson. Hey, Tracy.
Richard.
Hey,
oh my gosh. We got a bumper crop of lovely people coming in. And now we're going to go to, baby, it's time to say hello to these lovely people. You ready?
I am.
3, 2, 1, and hello everyone. Happy Saturday.
Hi guys.
We have done so much work in the background here on StorySmack this week. We have a lovely new chat window, which we will be showing you once we bring on Empty Set movie maven Rob Otto. Mm-hmm. But before I say anything else, you might want to jot this down. Steve Rickyberg, the Iceberg, is pioneered a new way for junkies to hang out on the first Saturday of every month from 4 to 11 p.m. Pacific time. There is an open Zoom chat, and you can go to that at bit.ly/Siglerism-happy-hour. You know what, babe? I'm going to bring that back up as soon as we get the podcast going so the podcast listeners can hear it. Okay,
sounds good.
So bring that down. And now, without further ado, we are bringing on the Rambler, the Vampire Killer, the Hard Drinker. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Robert Otto.
I'm sorry. I was just practicing my snake dances, and okay, let me. I gotta wiggle out of this. And, okay, there. Okay. Hi. How you doing?
For a second there, I had flashbacks to Salma Hayek. I couldn't tell you 2 apart. That's so weird.
I know. I'm slightly curvier than she is, but in all the wrong places.
I was about to say, it's hard to do to be curvier than Salma Hayek.
We will be talking about Salma Hayek and how she completely stole the show with her 5-minute performance in this movie. But
if even.
We are now that everybody in the chat room is saying hi to Rob. Hello. And
hi, everybody.
Baby, I think it's time for us to jump into our podcast mode. Are you ready?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1.
This is StorySmack. Welcome to episode 66 of StorySmack, a podcast about stories and storytellers in the world of pop culture. My name is A.B. Sigler, audiobook narrator and founding partner at Empty Set Entertainment.
And my name is Scott Sigler, #1 New York Times best-selling novelist. And if you try to run, I got 6 little friends that can run faster than you can, which is such a cheesy line, but it's just in his hands, it was excellent. And back with us again today is Empty Set movie maven Rob Otto.
Woohoo!
Rob, how goes?
Hey, Rob.
Hey, did you say this is StorySmack number 666? Because for these satanic bloodsuckers, that just works perfectly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, try
absolutely.
Yes, it's. We're going to go and call it episode 66.6.
That works too.
Okay, so we are rolling along. I think we are.
That was me.
That's okay. We are talking about
From Dusk Till Dawn.
From Dusk Till Dawn.
Do I love this movie so much? We are going to talk about it. It came out in 1996. Mm-hmm. And as usual, I was hoping that you could give us your movie announcer trailer man voice.
Boy, 1996 a long time ago. I was 7 when this movie came out.
You were not.
Here goes the movie voice. On the run from a bank robbery that left several police officers dead, Seth Gecko, played by George Clooney, and his paranoid loose cannon brother, Richard, played by Quentin Tarantino, hightail it to the Mexican border. Kidnapping preacher Jacob Fuller, played by Harvey Keitel, and his kids, the criminals sneak across the border in the family's RV and hole up in a topless bar. Unfortunately, the bar also happens to be home base for a gang of vampires, and the brothers and their hostages have to fight their way out.
It does. It's a crazy show.
It's a batshit crazy movie. I don't know if Richard's here. Richard finds me $1 every time I swear. But hey, why don't you tell us about the financials? I love the financials parts. One of my favorite parts going over the movies is saying what's a hit, what's not a hit, what becomes a cult classic, wasn't there. So how did this movie do with the bank?
So this movie cost $19 million to make, which we'll get into a little bit. I'm sure Rob has a lot of info about these particular movie makers. $19 million was a huge budget for these movie makers. Well, at least for Robert Rodriguez. In 2021 dollars, that's $31.6 million. So the budget was $19.9 million or $19 million, and it made $26.5 million worldwide in its first month. Today, that would be 43.1.
So a marginal success then when you factor in the promotional budget and the advertising?
Yeah, to be fair, it's a reasonable success. And I think, this was back in the day where Miramax was sort of movie magic, and they had Sundance locked up, and they had all sorts of stuff locked up, and those things helped promote the movie and didn't hit the marketing budget. So yeah, I'd say it didn't probably make back everything in the first month, but it was pretty successful.
Rob, give us your high-end general thought on this movie.
Well, the big thing is because it was Miramax, and they pretty much let their creators go with what they need to do. So you get Robert Kurtzman and Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez, and you put them all together, and you're talking about three guys who can make movies in their own image. Merging together, Miramax let them do that, and it's one of those movies that, didn't do great at the box office, but did so well in the secondary market that it spawned a whole bunch of other stuff.
Right.
So, it was a quality movie by quality people, and it actually holds up pretty well. Yeah, there's
agreed. Yeah,
sensitivities. They come from characters who you expect racial sensitivities. So that kind of stuff you roll right over because it's true to the character, and the movie itself works really well.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
We are having some audio cutouts with Rob, but
enormously talented writer. He's an enormously talented director. He acts too. And that's also true of Robert Rodriguez. He has acted, and he much less frequently tries to act. But he directed this movie and was completely in his element. It's in the desert, which is his home. It's a horror show, which is his home. All of that stuff. I love it so much, and I love so many smart decisions that they made because they could. Right? They were industry darlings at a time that, that meant the rough and tumble guys, not the Kardashians, right? So to be an industry darling today, you're shiny and an influencer. Back then, you bucked the system from within the system. And I think this movie does that really, really well, and I love it.
I also like this movie, and one of my favorite things about this movie, next to Selma Hayek, of course, is
what's your favorite two things in this movie?
Let's see. We are going to take pause for a second here, see if we can do anything. Is your phone off the Wi-Fi? Yeah. Let me check mine. Hold on, guys. We're checking the Wi-Fi. We'll edit this out from the podcast, maybe. Nope, my Wi-Fi is off. I wonder what's going on. All right. At any rate, could you go shut my computer? That could be it. It's on top of the dresser of all the weird places to have a computer. My favorite part about this movie, I think, is the subtle, deft character introductions, the character broad strokes in the first 10 minutes of the movie, as we are establishing the Gecko brothers. And this is typical of Quentin Tarantino script, which is just enough information to give you an idea of the situation the guys are in, where they are going, what their options are, and it's all meat, no fat, and it's a very lean serving of what's going on. But you are armed with enough information to know these are unique characters that are similar to things you haven't seen but are different. They're in a real predicament. They have very few options, and then they get thrown in a completely different direction. That's one thing that Tarantino does really well, and it works great in this movie.
Yeah, and this is also the first of a couple of times, or the second, I guess, of a couple of times where Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez work together by each bringing their strongest game. And you see that a little bit in this movie. David Lamb, you just asked how much influence did Tarantino have on the writing of the opening act of the movie. And there's a lot of people who will say that the first half of this is Tarantino and the second half of this is Robert Rodriguez. And if you look at their other movies, and especially the Grindhouse things that they did, you totally see this. Robert Rodriguez is action and movement and horror, and Tarantino is a lot more character driven, even though the characters are crazy.
All right, we are going to talk about the cast. Rob, we'll start out with you, but we'll see how our internet connection holds up for you there, buddy. And let's see. First,
I'm used to talking to myself, so if you guys just end up cutting me off, I'm still going to sit here for an hour and talk about this movie. So you just keep rolling, Scotty. Do what you got to do.
Gotcha, buddy.
Right?
Let's get
Right.
this. We decided a huge part of this movie happening was a gentleman named Robert Kurtzman.
Yeah, so let's start with him. I know you said we're going to talk about the cast, so of course I talk about the script. So here we are, Kurtzman. He actually ran K&B Effects Group and still does, and really is like a huge effects wizard back then and still today in Hollywood. But Kurtzman wrote a treatment for this movie, thinking it would use a lot of special effects and he could show off his company's special effects. So he didn't write the script. He actually paid Tarantino $1,500. So Quentin Tarantino, you want to talk about how much effect he had at the beginning of the movie? Oh, all. Yeah, he wrote the movie. This is a Tarantino script from start to finish, just based off of Kurtzman's idea, essentially. And one thing, so Tarantino said, yep, I'll take $1,500, but also I want K&B to do the special effects for Reservoir Dogs, which essentially came down to figuring out a way to cut a guy's ear off, right, and dance around with it. So they did that, and so Tarantino knew that they were making Reservoir Dogs, and he got that special effect for free for writing From Dusk Till Dawn. And then Kurtzman, just like Rodriguez and Tarantino, goes on to have a huge career after this. I mean, we're talking about the special effects and makeup for Green, Boogie Nights, Green Mile, Simple Plan, over and over and over again. And of course, the cut off ear in Reservoir Dogs.
And the
Reservoir
crazy thing
Dogs is
about
huge,
that that one scene in Reservoir Dogs is, as soon as you say, that ear, I think stuck in the middle with you. Like, you can't help
Steelers
it.
wheel.
It's
Yeah, give me some Jerry
so
Rafferty.
visceral.
We're good to go.
Yeah, that was such a rough scene.
Yes. And as Rob cut out a little bit there, but he's done the special effects for Spy Kids. That's Robert Rodriguez, excuse me. Scream, Boogie Nights, The Green Mile, and A Simple
Misery.
Plan. And we've covered the Robert Rodriguez stuff?
Not really. We'll talk a little bit more about Robert Rodriguez, because Robert Rodriguez is one of my all-time heroes. He made his very first movie called El Mariachi, and if you haven't seen it and have a chance to see it, you need to see it. You want to shift the effects or the pictures?
Yep.
He made that by he made the money to make the movie by being a guinea pig in phase 1 clinical trials, and he gathered all the money and so he lived in a facility for a month, and he had his blood taken 100 times, this, that, and the other, and he made about $7,000. He also wrote the script on index cards while he was in the treatment center for that month being a guinea pig, and El Mariachi was one of his fellow subjects who he met in there and was like, wait a minute.
Was the guy already an actor, babe?
No. Well, he wanted to be. He wanted to be an actor, but he was not necessarily an actor. And so this is Robert Rodriguez on the screen now. So he pulls himself up by his bootstraps. He gets signed to Miramax. They bring him to Hollywood to essentially remake El Mariachi into a movie called Desperado, which also has Antonio Banderas and Salma Hayek in it.
God.
And it's this that's up on the screen now. This is his autobiography called Rebel Without a Crew. And if you are a creator of any ilk, even me, I'm not really a creator, I'm a facilitator for creativity. And this book is so empowering and so interesting. He comes to Hollywood to remake El Mariachi into Desperado. There he is with the python, and he gets an office at Paramount or whatever, and a stipend for an apartment, and he sleeps on his office couch so that he can send money back home so his kid brother can go to school.
Wow.
He's a rock star, and he goes on to make all sorts of great movies that people love, including Spy Kids, because he made Spy Kids because his kids couldn't watch the movies that he made. Sure. So he wanted to make a movie for them too. Well, I love him.
We will come back to the actors in 1 second. For those of you listening on the podcast who are not watching us live, there is a new thing that is the Siglerism Happy Hour. It is the first Saturday of every month from 4 to 11 p.m. Pacific time. And you can get to that at bit.ly/Siglerism, one word, -happy-hour. That's bit.ly/Siglerism Siglerism-Happy-Hour. That is hosted by Steve the Iceberg Ricky Bird.
It is,
that
yeah.
correct?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's an open Zoom chat, and people can just log on and hang out with other junkies.
Yep, and we're going to be, we try to drop in at least a little bit each time, but we're in the midst of recording the Stone Wolves, so I don't know how much time that we'll spend in there. But yeah, people drop in and out. It was super fun last time. I was making pretzels during the whole thing. It was fun.
All right, now we get to talk about one of my all-time favorite creators, and that is, of course, Mr. Quentin Tarantino. This was Tarantino's first. This is boggling to think that this was the point his career was at one point, where this was his first paid writing gig since he wrote Reservoir Dogs, True Romance, Pulp Fiction, and Natural Born Killers on spec. So he didn't get paid to write those initial scripts.
Which is so outrageous.
Which is
crazy.
Those movies alone, that is a Hall of Fame Hollywood career.
Yeah.
And of course now we add From Dusk Till Dawn plus all the movies that he directed, and it's incredible. And
I had to go back and research that fact because
Okay.
as soon as I read it, I'm like, well, that can't be right. He already had all these other scripts that he had written. And then I realized he wrote all those for free, then sold the scripts. So this is the first time he got paid specifically to write a script. And that blows my mind.
It's
Think
incredible.
about the awesome work Sigler you just said. It's amazing.
It's incredible.
He didn't get a penny until he sold those scripts.
And that gives you that is always an awesome perspective on how difficult it is to make it in Hollywood, and how much connections, perseverance, right place, right time have to be added onto a significant amount of hard work and talent. And to think he had written Reservoir Dogs, True Romance, Pulp Fiction, and Natural Born Killers on his own, on spec, not getting paid for those. And to think that those 4 screenplays are just sitting there waiting to be turned into a movie, and you have to wonder what else got made instead of those back in the day. But eventually he percolated up to the top.
Well, and you have to wonder if Tarantino, I mean, we'll talk about this. I think Rob, certainly I have a lot to say about this particular class of American directors that include Rodriguez and Tarantino and this era of movie making, but he also may have been holding all the cards on purpose, right? And it turns out like he's Quentin Tarantino for a reason, right? He's super talented at his job as a writer director. That said, he may have been holding on to those so that he would have control over how the movies are.
You may have passed. You're right.
But you have to do that only if you have, one, a way to pay the rent, and 2, the actual knowledge that you're that good of a you're gonna make it, or you have to believe that about yourself. And I don't know how anybody does that through 4 whole screenplays and they just sit on the shelf. I don't know how you do that, but he did it, and I'm glad.
Now, Rob, this will be it's shocking for me to think about this, and it'll be shocking for people when they realize how old 25-year-old movie. This was the movie that made George Clooney a movie star. Is this his first big movie?
Yeah, it really was.
Movie.
He'd done plenty of starring ER at the time, which is how he met Tarantino. Tarantino directed an episode of ER and then thought, well, he might be pretty good in one of my movies. Never expected him to be the big star. So, but he was by far not the first choice of anybody. I mean, they looked to play Seth Gecko, Antonio Banderas, Steve Buscemi, Michael Madsen, Tim Roth, John Travolta, Christopher Walken, Jeff Goldblum, James Wood,
Robert De Niro.
They wanted to play Seth Gecko, right? But almost all of them just had other conflicts going on, right? And you saw, it's funny, a bunch of those end up appearing. All
right, Rob, we are getting, for the first time ever in StorySmack, we're getting a lot of internet interference coming from your end. Yeah, so I'll finish this up. But yeah, we heard you say Buscemi, Madsen, Roth, Travolta, Walken, Jeff Goldblum, James Wood, Robert De Niro. They all passed because of scheduling conflicts. The only one to outright decline the role was Travolta because he had no interest in doing a vampire movie. He was doing Pulp Fiction.
He did Pulp. Yeah. He went on to do Pulp Fiction.
But he did get his wife Kelly Preston.
Oh yeah.
He gets money out of this movie.
Kelly Preston was the newscaster host.
Yeah.
And Clooney had, and this is Tarantino style, which I have copped thousands of times in my own work, which is setting up a particular cadence for a pop culture or slang phrase, something to give a character a little bit of zhuzh, if you will.
Sure.
And in this one, it was Clooney's catchphrase was, "Okay, Xers, let's go Xing." For example, "Okay, Ramblers, let's get rambling." okay, hard drinkers, let's drink hard, and okay, vampire killers, let's kill vampires. And from a writing perspective, that just creates, it's called repetitive structure. It creates a bed of familiarity for a character, for a situation, and you either have one character repeat those things, or you have other characters mimic it as kind of a subtle way to say these characters are becoming closer and bonding together.
Yep, for sure.
And that's one of the
Well,
those
and
tricks.
one of the things you see on the screen right now, you see this picture of go back to the gecko. Yeah, of Clooney as Seth Gecko. And this, if you think about it and you watched TV back in the day, you remember him from you take the good, you take the bad, you take them
Facts of Life.
Facts of Life, thank you, yeah. And he kind of had this sort of John Stamos-y, like big long mullet and all this other stuff. And then he shows up in a movie. And he'd also been on ER and he was dreamy and all that other stuff. But he shows up kind of greasy and rough and tumble and dirty, and that, oh my goodness, neck tattoo, come on now. Lord, let's talk about that neck tattoo. And he's completely in the part, and he does this beautiful thing where the physicality of him is so different than the physicality of George Clooney, but Seth Gecko has a lot of Clooney in him. There are ad libs that are that Seth Gecko says that are George Clooney ad libs. The tenacity with which he loves his brother, Seth Gecko loves his brother and puts up with his brother, is something that George Clooney had talked about having had a relationship like that in his life. And so he goes from that mulleted kid on the Facts of Life to this guy by transition. I mean, I know he's got a long and storied career. This is an Ocean's 11 shot, but his first foray into the movies is
the natural charm, right? I mean,
sure.
he's the bad guy. He's a killer. He has his own rules, but when he has to and yet you like him.
We're losing Rob again. We got Rob. Rob's gonna check and see maybe there's a window open or something like that on the computer.
Yeah. Okay, interneters. I'm gonna go check my internet.
This is why we have to have Rob talking. He manages to tie it all together. And I think watching this, I'll just say this about Clooney in this. The first 10 minutes of the movie, where he's in the movie, watching his interplay with Quentin Tarantino is so good, because you watch Clooney desperately wanting to believe that his brother is telling the truth, knowing his brother is not, because he's seen this 1,000 times, and knowing his brother probably believes the crap that he's saying. It's Clooney just with his face communicates so much in that scene. It's great.
Right, and this is one of the powerful things about having George Clooney in this role is he's like Robbie said, like a total natural charm that he brings to each one of his roles, and you've seen it 100 times. You've seen it with him on the red carpet. Even he's a graceful, gracious gentleman kind of thing, and so was Seth Gecko. Even though Seth had no illusions about himself, Seth was an absolutely evil man, and he knew it. And so I think that he does that really, really well.
So they got Tarantino, they got Clooney, and they get Harvey Keitel.
Oh, and Harvey Keitel. I mean, we could talk forever about Harvey Keitel and the long and storied career that he has had. But this particular one, he sort of plays against type. He's a preacher who's lost his faith and lost his wife, and that's how he lost his faith. And he takes his children, and he's sort of just going to try and start over. But normally Keitel plays, and he's quite famous for working with brand new directors, which is how he gets into this movie. Is he wants to work with Tarantino because Tarantino is new and fresh, and he wants to do that. He's done that a lot in his career. He did it with Scorsese as well. He studied at he as an actor studied with the Actors Studio with Lee Strasberg, which is amazing to me. Stella Adler and Lee Strasberg. Because he's old enough. He's 80 something.
Yeah.
Now.
We got if you guys listening to the podcast, we have a picture of him up here in his current age. Yeah. And it's everybody gets older, but it's still pretty jarring when you just remember it's 25 years ago and he did the movie. Yeah.
But he takes this role and he plays sort of against type for him. He had been in Bad Lieutenant, where he was an evil guy. He's been in a lot of Scorsese movies. He's been in, he becomes Winston Wolfe, who's absolutely a bad man.
Incredible.
And in this movie, in From Dusk Till Dawn, he plays against type, and he ends up being a very patient, very honorable man. He doesn't serve that character well, but it serves his kids well, for sure. And I love that.
And then we have, rounding out the cast, Juliette Lewis in the role of Preacher's daughter, Kate Fuller, for this movie. She plays it pretty straight until they're inside the bar. She has long been recognized as one of Hollywood's most talented, versatile actors of her generation. Her debut performance in Cape Fear was Oscar nominated.
14,
She's
she was
pretty good
14
start.
years old.
14.
Yeah,
She
pretty good
is
start.
Really, she's another one when you think about her body of work. And to date, she has worked with some of the most revered directors in the industry: Tarantino, Martin Scorsese, Hallstrom, Oliver Stone, Gary Marshall, and I realized today, babe, I've never seen Natural Born Killers. Never
Oh
seen
my
it.
goodness, I can't
Oh
even
my
believe that.
gosh.
Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy?
Yeah.
So we'll probably have to add that to StorySmack. I will say, I found out an interesting tidbit researching Juliette Lewis for this show. She has this enormously powerful career. She's never been in a Best Picture nominated
Really?
movie. Yeah.
Wow.
I find that
That's
pretty interesting. Or maybe
pretty
a
shocking.
winning movie. Maybe it's winning.
Well, that's just because old school got screwed. That's why.
And this is on screen now. This is her in Natural Born. Well, that's her
Yeah.
now. And then the blonde one is her in Natural
Natural
Born
Born Killers.
Killers.
And Howard points out she's also she's a rock musician. She's a singer in her own band.
Yeah, and she right at the height of her like Natural Born Killers, Californication, all of that, or California, sorry, all of that. She quits for 6 years to pursue her music full time.
Which is so fun.
And guess what? She came back and started acting again. She's a powerhouse.
And that, Rob, that brings us to the scene stealer of the movie, none other
Speaking
than
of powerhouses,
Hi, Tiny.
Selma Hayek. Well, I got distracted just from this picture. Rob, tell us about Selma Hayek, please.
well, all you need to know is that her costume fitting didn't take very long. So Salma Hayek is the lead temptress vampire stripper queen, kind of, right? And Scott's right. When she hits the screen, she does this dance with this giant, like 11-foot snake wearing next to nothing, just golden, curvy, glorious, wonderful.
Oh, no.
We had Rob rocking there. Dang it, we just lost Rob.
Oh,
Sorry, Rob. We'll finish up.
gone, or am I just mostly
You're
gone?
kind of in this. You're kind of all of a sudden you're auto tuning. You're like a Backstreet Boy in here. But Rob has I think Rob's pointed out Selma has a fear of snakes.
Mm-hmm.
Did she, Rob? She tried to talk Tarantino.
Let me
up?
try to get this out, Scott. I'll
Okay.
do it quickly. So,
Go.
fear of snakes. Almost didn't get the part until they told her that Madonna would get it if she couldn't dance with the snake.
Okay.
So she went to a therapist and a hypnotist
What?
for months
Uh-huh.
to try and put herself in a trance to be able to dance with the snake.
That's insane. Wait.
That's and
And she did it.
And she did it.
she did it.
How much prep for the dance itself did she have to do?
There was no choreographer. Basically, Rodriguez said, just go to the music. And
I
so
mean-
that whole dance you see with her, like unscripted. And that's why she interacts with the snake so well. You know, it climbs through her hair and then she lets it wrap around her hand and she kind of sticks her hand out. She's improvising that entire dance,
out.
you know, until they get to the part where she did whiskey. Quentin Tarantino's
I think
mouth.
Rob's saying probably you have to put with the foot, the part with the foot in
Yeah,
the mouth.
pouring the
that-
whiskey
that
in
had to be- you had to
Tarantino's
set
mouth.
up
Yeah,
cameras for
yeah,
that.
of course.
Right.
Okay.
But then let's give her credit. I don't know if you're still hearing me. You get this. She stood on one leg and lifted her own leg over, licked whiskey off her thigh, all by standing on one leg. And I kept looking around to see who was holding her hand or holding her up. No, she did that all on her own.
Yep.
Wow.
But you'd think she'd be kind of top heavy. No, it worked.
Well,
So one of the things that I find interesting as the one person here who's probably one host who has worn the most high heels is the first thing that I looked at when I first saw this movie when she came out after the snake and the boobs. Come on, was if she was wearing shoes. Because when I was 19, I actually did walk on a bar and pour tequila shots as part of my job, and the only way I would ever do that is in absolutely flat shoes, and she wasn't wearing any shoes at all. She was like, you know what, I'll do this, and she had, of course, she would have had to manage the shoe for the whiskey pour, but smart. If she was going to trance herself and she had to pour the whiskey,
great.
but she was like, look,
It was
okay,
great.
I'll do the snake, but I'm not wearing flipping shoes.
Just one really incredible scene, incredible talent at work there with all the things she had to overcome for that. Now, Rob, what we're going to do is, as we continue, we're going to try and manage bit traffic on the fly. So talk a little bit slower and take a pause between sentences because it's kind of building up with your connection and then cutting off. We'll see if that works. If not, we'll just boot your ass and we'll figure it out for next week.
Robbie and I were talking.
Okay.
Robbie and I were talking earlier, so I can jump in if I need to. We were going to move into sort of talking about, and I mentioned this at the top of the hour, this particular time in American movie making includes this class of what film loves to call auteurs. And I do think this class belongs there. And they're very, at the time, they're very Miramax driven, which is fine. There's Alison Anders, who was super powerful and a female director. There's obviously Robert Rodriguez. There's Quentin Tarantino. There's Kevin Smith. There's a whole bunch of folks, Alexandre Rockwell, who make these really powerful, very tiny movies, right? They're not Oliver Stone making JFK. They're making a story about a titty bar on the south side of the border that is full of vampires. That's a tiny movie when you think about its scope in American society, but they make powerful statements, you know? And I love them so much. And there's so many sort of interconnected stories of Tarantino and Rodriguez and that whole class.
So Tarantino and Rodriguez, they met when they did 4 Rooms.
Okay.
Which is a movie with essentially 4 separate tiny movies.
And Antonio Banderas.
Yes.
That's
and
my
they
favorite
each
one.
did one. That's how they met. But the cool thing, to A's point, is that they're from very different backgrounds. And yet their similarities in filmmaking made them friends immediately.
Yep.
For sure.
And they just kept helping each other and working together, and eventually came together where they did, the Grindhouse movie, which is again 2 separate movies that kind of This movie was almost like a test case, right? Because this is really, first half is a Tarantino crime movie, and the second half is a Rodriguez horror movie.
Right.
And just in case that cut out a little bit, so just in case anybody didn't hear that, we talked about this earlier too. The first half of this movie is absolutely a Tarantino crime movie, absolutely more akin to Pulp Fiction than it is to Sin City. And the second half is absolutely a Robert Rodriguez horror film.
Yep.
And I think it works really well, and I think that their collaboration is a really wonderful thing because they work over and over again with the same actors, the same DPs, the same crew, the same movie makeup people. They do all of this because the more you know, and if it's working, why mess with it? And they made all these beautiful things. Howard, Gas Food Lodging is an amazing movie. Is an Alison Anders movie for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And
All right, so Scotty, if the audio is going to be a problem, I should probably just go and let you guys finish. But I just want to get one thing in here.
Get that point out.
This is how Rodriguez stayed away from this being an NC-17 movie, because they were really beginning to crack down in the mid-90s.
Okay.
He made all the vampire blood green instead of red.
Are you kidding?
And that was enough for it to be fantasy blood instead of real blood.
So you've got naked vampires running around. You've got Selma Hayek grinding it down with a snake, doing some foot oral action with
There's
one of the
a huge
actors.
amount of violence.
There is
an enormous amount of violence.
Explosions,
violence,
Rape,
people getting
murder.
shot all over the place, and green blood was the thing that got him out of it.
Well, because and that's actually pretty standard for the movie MPAA or whatever it is,
Right.
because they don't care too much about actual physical violence against human beings unless it's gory.
And this movie has just a ton of people, a ton of great actors in various roles playing multiple parts. Tom Savini, who plays what?
Should we let Robbie go?
Oh, yeah. Head out, Rob.
Thank you so much.
All right. Enjoy the rest of the movie. Screw you guys. I'm going home.
So let me, we're going to keep the, let's
Thank
go
you
to
so
the
much,
main
Rob.
camera.
Bye.
You guys listening to podcasts at home, we're going to send Rob and we're having some slight problems here with the internet connection. So we'll go here, and I turn this off if I can find it.
You want me to talk while you do this? Now that Rob's gone? Yeah.
Black rectangle. No, we're good. We're good. Now here we go. So now, if you guys are listening to this at home, the podcast, if you're still listening after our troubles, we've got the chat window up right now. We do this live every other Saturday. We do it at 2 o'clock Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern time, and we interact with people watching it live who are in the chat room right now, talking things up. This movie, a lot of people playing different roles. Tom Savini plays Sex Machine. He's a legendary stuntman, and he is the special effects creator behind movies like Dawn of the Dead. And who else, babe?
So Tom Savini's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Saxon, who plays FBI Agent Chase, is an actor who appeared in Enter the Dragon and cop in A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Mm-hmm.
And Fred Williamson, and I love this one, who plays Frost, who was in many, many of the blaxploitation movies in the 70s. What's interesting about Fred Williamson is he had rules. He was a big star at the time.
Okay.
And he had 3 rules when selecting a movie role. 1 was he could not be killed in the movie.
Okay.
2, he had to win any fight he was in. And 3, he always gets the girl at the end of the movie. And then he gets offered this role, and he broke every single one of his own rules because he wanted to be in this movie so bad, and he justified it by saying, "Well, I'm a vampire, so like I didn't die, and and I don't care about a girl if I'm a vampire."
Right.
And he did the movie anyway, which I love.
And of course, as David pointed out in the chat room, Cheech Marin plays 3 characters: Mexican border guard, the strip club doorman, and the gangster Carlos.
Yeah, and he becomes a vampire at the end. So there's also the potential that he
4 roles.
He only becomes a vampire. It doesn't do much there. But yeah, what's interesting about this is Cheech Marin is a big fan of Robert Rodriguez even back there because of El Mariachi.
Yeah,
and Robert Rodriguez is like a second cousin or something, or third cousin to Danny Trejo. So he ends up in the movie as well. Mm-hmm. And goes on to work with Robert Rodriguez and make Machete and Machete Kills and all of that stuff.
Okay.
But Cheech Marin also knows him and is like, yeah, no, I definitely want to be in this. And so he essentially is a chorus member. Back in the Greek play days, the chorus did a whole bunch of tiny little roles around the way.
Things. Oh, that's great.
And he does the same thing because he just couldn't not be in it.
It harkens back Rodriguez, Tarantino. They tend to work with a lot of the same people, a lot of the same actors and actresses, and stunt people, DPs, etc. It really feels like they are this group of friends who are all very, very impressed with each other's work.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like this whole crew is kind of like kids on Christmas. Like, I get to work with you again.
Well, and there are even some fun things in here. So Tom Savini, who is a world-class, working today, absolutely world-famous makeup and special effects guy, is a vampire in this movie. And he doesn't do a lot of behind-the-scenes work in this movie, but he also doesn't do a lot of acting. So during the scene, when the vampires come out, when the vampires become vampires, there's a big bar. If you haven't seen it, I don't know why you're watching, but a big bar scene, big bar fight, vampires versus humans, and Tom Savini, not an actor, actually throwing punches, including hitting George Clooney. I love that story so much.
He must have waited for that. So he supposedly really hit George Clooney.
He really hit everybody because he's not an actor. He's been at that point, he's been making movie special effects probably for 20 years.
Okay.
But he's not an actor. So he's like, sure, I can be in a bar fight. Shaboom! And like doesn't realize you're supposed to pull your punches.
Oh my God. That must have been, the insurance people must have been fired up. And we've got other great bit characters in this. Michael Parks plays Sheriff Earl McGraw, which is, again, going to that first 10 minutes of the movie I talked about in the open of this, where you've got a character completely setting the stage for the whole rest of the movie, giving you all the backstory, doing it in a fun way. He ate some bad food. He's got the poops. He's just trying to shoot the crap with the guy, the drugstore or the convenience store clerk. And he does this wonderful performance, this whole deadpan thing, and then boom, he's dead. He's out. That's all part of all that's Tarantino film. The first 10 minutes kind of sets everything up, and then here's our stage, and then we sort of start the movie. And Parks played in Kill Bill Volume 1, and he was also in Planet Terror.
Which is part of the Grindhouse.
Yes.
Part of it,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Also, there are a whole bunch of callbacks that you see over and over again. The big kahuna burgers that they eat in the hotel room at the beginning when he comes back with food for the bank clerk and his brother, or Seth comes back with that, and of course the bank clerk is now dead. They eat from a restaurant called Big Kahuna,
Yeah.
which was in Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction.
Of course, that's a tasty burger.
Yeah, and the Chongo beer is from the bar in Desperado.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's kind of a
That's,
it's a pretty neat thing.
People love those Easter eggs. Like, we are in the middle of writing GFL Book 7, and we're recording the audiobook for The Stone Wolves. And both of those books, a huge part of the game, the fun interactive game I play with my work, is I'm going to throw in a lot of Easter eggs from previous books and see who catches it. It doesn't affect the story if you don't catch it. If you do, it's that little moment of, oh, I know what that thing is, and that matters, that kind of holds your attention, and it makes it more personal. Plus, if you've ever read any of my work, you will recognize probably 10 to 15 Quentin Tarantino movie lines worked in as dialogue in every one of my books.
Well, and we just had this happen, and this is why it's so wonderful and why it's super fun to watch a Tarantino Rodriguez collaboration or watch any of the movies that sort of are in that time frame, because you see this little interconnectivity that we as Sigler junkies love so much. We actually just had somebody email and say, hey, maybe Scott should think about writing like I don't know, Hot Midnight or Tentacles, and more Tentacles. And we were like, wait, what? So it's a pretty fun thing to do that
I do
way.
have a rule. Someday I will write Hot Midnight. The rules are, I have to be very drunk, maybe high. It's legal in California. Don't hate me. And I have to write it from beginning to end, and I don't get to go back at all. There's no going back and changing anything. It's just going to be a stream. I'll give myself an outline. An outline's fine. Okay. But I will write it.
Can we still edit it, though? Or
yeah, it'll go through the normal editing process.
Good.
But my normal editing process of, like, I've rewritten the book 5 times before it even gets to first draft status, before it even gets passed off to anybody else. I think that'd be pretty fun. Wade's got fraternity brother of mine, Wade Stitt, has his 22-year-old son listening to Earthcore right now. Yeah.
Neat.
Sweet.
So I'm bummed because I love this movie so much and I love to talk movies with Rob. But of course, today we have connectivity issues. So far, you're the only host of StorySmack who's never missed a StorySmack.
That's correct.
Because I had food poisoning once and had to drop out right before it began. So there's so many fun, cool things we've been talking about this generation, I'll say, of American directors. One of the things that Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez especially really, really loved what was called the Grindhouse movies in the 70s and the blaxploitation movies in the 70s, the sort of gritty, dark, violent, Fort Apache, the Bronx kind of movies. They loved them and wanted to bring that ethos into their work, even though they were telling, like I said, sort of smaller, self-contained horror stories. And I think they did a really good job of it. Like, if you think about Night of the Evil Dead, that is on a bigger platform and telling a much bigger story. It's oh gosh, now there are zombies probably everywhere. But that's not what's happening in these movies. And it doesn't happen in Sin City, and it doesn't happen in Planet Terror, and it doesn't happen in this generation. And especially for Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino, they tell quite in-depth but small stories. If anybody's ever hung out with me at a Sigler Fest or something and we've ever talked about Tarantino, you know, I love him and I hated The Hateful Eight. And even so, I have to say this about The Hateful Eight. It is a self-contained story that has many, many layers and is unique, but it's also a small, closed system. And so we don't have to worry about all those terrible people infecting our lives and things like that. And they do that really, really
and
lovely.
There was a throwback, Ezekiel 25:17, which is Samuel L. Jackson's great biblical phrase from Pulp Fiction. That was supposed to be in From Dusk Till Dawn. It was meant to be spoken by Harvey Keitel's character as he fends off the vampires before being killed. Yep.
And Scott Fuller, who is the adopted child of Harvey Keitel and the sister or the brother of Juliette Lewis, is wearing a T-shirt that says Precinct 16 or 13, sorry, which is a nod to the John Carpenter movie Assault on Precinct 13. I keep saying 16. It's 13. Robert Rodriguez is very vocal about John Carpenter having changed his whole life and changed his trajectory and made him want to make movies. So I love that he always calls back John Carpenter as well.
This is a cool tidbit. Clooney's neck flame tattoo.
Due to the heavy number of special effects, the film had to be strictly budgeted so that scenes would not have to be cut. That meant that only 6 full-body vampire suits could be made for the climax that literally had dozens of vampires in the scene. So in the final scene, or in the final film, the same 6 actors play every vampire who got killed over and over and over again.
So for the few scenes where there were just like dozens of vampires, they just had some top-up makeup, or did they composite
They had
that?
Dummies, I think.
They had dummies?
They had a lot of
Oh my
dummies, and then
gosh.
they had a lot of like just from the back, I think. In some shots, dummies were made for shots. Dummies were made for shots where the vampires exploded, as well as puppets used for certain shots placed in the background along with cardboard cutouts. You are right.
Wow. It's crazy. A movie that was in today's dollars $30 million budget, and they used all that budget, and they had to have cardboard cutouts, which is part of the magic of movie making.
Oh, for sure,
when
yeah.
you've got guys, you've got people of this caliber, they know how it's going to look. They plan things out, and then the other thing you never see is they probably shot 15 different solutions, or like, that looks like crap, that doesn't work, that looks fake, and eventually they keep iterating till they come across, okay, if we put the cardboard cutouts here, put this light on it, that looks fine. Plus, nobody's looking at that,
Yeah, and in the whole movie, so we have a handful of deaths at the beginning of the movie. We have the 2 people in the convenience store. We have the bank clerk. Excuse me. And not counting those 3 and whoever else dies along the way accidentally, the movie count has the movie's death count, kill count, is 122. So if you think about, that's absolutely a grown-up NC-17 movie in any sense of the word,
Sure.
except MPAA doesn't care about death. They
I
care
would
about
like,
blood.
I have a bone to pick.
Okay.
Or lacks of bones to pick, if you will. The Tito and Tarantula, the vampire band that plays Titty Twister. It's a Chicano stoner rock group formed in 92 by underground music figure Tito La Riva. T+T previously contributed songs to Robert Rodriguez's Desperado. The lineup also featured Robert Rodriguez and Oingo Boingo drummer Johnny Vatos Hernando. Tito did some music for the movie Repo Man and the porn movie New Wave Hookers.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the problem. We watched them play, and it's a great band, and it's dirty rock. It's wonderful. It's the whole bar is jumping. Then when everybody reveals their true form and shows that they are vampires, they're instruments. Their instruments are dead bodies. And first of all, no way to keep that in tune. There's no way to get the second
And
of
also,
all,
what are the strings?
the strings are just kind of some flappy stuff.
That's
Look,
not how that works.
As a musician, that's not how any of that works. Which means the whole time they were lip syncing. They were not playing
faking
those
it.
songs. Those vampires were lip syncing, and as a musician, I'm not happy that they got that choice gig at the Titty Twister bar with a backing track. It's a bunch of bunk.
I mean, I'm pretty sure nobody cares when Salma Hayek comes out.
To be fair.
And she was absolutely not lip syncing at all, you guys, at all.
I cannot believe most of that dance was improvised.
Rob Otto is now in the chat room, and he also points out that the New Wave Hookers movie featured an underaged Tracy Lords.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Tracy Lords, if you guys are not familiar with that name, Tracy Lords was the queen of porn for quite a while. She was one of she might have been the first major breakout celebrity to kind of cross over into
one of the very
current
few who
pop
still
culture.
have done. Yeah.
Who
still
have done.
If you guys don't know this, Tarantino, and Howard, back me up, I'm pretty sure this is true. Tarantino is not a fan of lip syncing. Not lip syncing, ad-libbing, sorry. And Robert Rodriguez actually not nearly as offended by ad-libbing, but the line that Seth Gecko says when he says, "No thanks, I've already had a wife," was an improv line by George Clooney, and Robert Rodriguez was like, "Yeah, we don't need that. We're going to cut that out." And then the studio, when they made a trailer, left it in the trailer. So he was like, "Geez, I guess I got to do it."
A nice, another Hollywood connection. One of the movie's makeup artists was Greg Nicotero, who he is the guy in the movie that Sex Machine swipes the beer from. Mm-hmm. That, of course, he oversees the makeup effects on AMC's The Walking Dead. Greg Nicotero is the guy who actually started got the process of The Walking Dead going, and has been involved in a bunch of lawsuits when they kind of bumped him off of the thing. We had something in front of Greg Nicotero. Actually, we infected in front of Greg Nicotero several years ago. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, but I mean, it would have been friggin' awesome. He's a very, very powerful guy.
And what's so crazy about this is there are so many special effects in this movie, but this might be the biggest confluence of special effects artists
so many
on the screen that we've ever seen.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. And this movie, although as we pointed out in the open, it didn't have world-crushing box office numbers to start out with, but it survived on DVD and it kept going that way. Eventually spawned 2 sequels, which I've not seen either. I've heard they're not good.
Well, I mean, the From Dusk Till Dawn series, Robert Rodriguez was part of, so it's different, I'll say. And
he was a producer.
Yeah, but he was hands-on.
Well, wait, there's the 2 sequel movies, which he was a producer, and then he was in charge of the TV show on El Rey Network.
And so the series itself was different, different enough that I'm fine with that. I was not a great big fan of the sequels at all.
The sequels?
Okay. They're not terrible, but they're not Rodriguez movies, for sure.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, we apologize for the internet jumping up and biting Rob in the internet
The cutest
sack.
movie maven we ever did see.
He is the cutest movie maven we ever did see. But he had a little bit of trouble with the technology today. So if you have listened this far in the podcast, thank you for putting up with it. We hope you've enjoyed us chit-chatting about this awesome movie. And, baby, what do we got coming up next week?
Or
next 2 weeks
2 weeks from now,
Yep.
we have yet another Miramax wonderkind. We're going to watch The Boondock Saints because it'll just be a few days after St. Patrick's Day. And The Boondock Saints was conceived, written, and directed by Troy Duffy. And if you have the time and the interest, it's a fascinating... I love the movie. The movie is this hugely popular cult classic, but there's also a movie called Overnight that is a documentary that Troy Duffy paid to have made during the making of the Boondock Saints. Both are fascinating. And so you have 2 weeks, might as well watch them both. And we will be back on March 20th.
And here's the lineup coming. So on March 20th, Boondock Saints. On April 3rd, Coming to America. We had planned to do Coming to America before they put out Coming to America 2, but they just changed their mind and they released it yesterday. So there you go. It's out. And then on 4/17, we're going to do the 10th anniversary of Thor. Most of the Marvel movies are pretty dang good. Thor is definitely in the top.
And I haven't seen it.
You've never seen Thor?
Nope.
Okay,
or Ragnarok.
Great.
Ragnarok.
It's Thor 2, I think, was not great. And then the Ragnarok one was fantastic. And on May the 1st, we're going to do Rogue One, one of, if not my favorite Star Wars movie. And we'll talk so much about how the people who wrote that were just immersed in the lore. And we're making all these connections, same connections we were just talking about in the Rodriguez movie. And then 5/15, ladies and gentlemen, May 15th, we're going to be doing John Wick because John Wick 4 is out on May 20th. So going over that again,
Never
please join
mess
us
with
for
a
the
good
Boondock
man's
Saints.
dog.
Don't do that.
Never mess with a good man's
2
dog.
weeks on March 20th, Boondock Saints. A knows a ton about the Boondock Saints. It's very fun. On April 3rd, Coming to America, the original. April 17th, Thor. May the 1st be with you with Rogue One. And on May 15th, we're going to do the original John Wick.
Sounds good. And I think that does it. Since we've already sadly lost our movie maven, I will tell you that this is it for episode 66.6 of StorySmack. You can find Scott and I online. Scott is at Scott Sigler on Twitter and at facebook.com/Scott Sigler and at twitch.tv/Scott Sigler and at youtube.com/Scott Sigler.
That's right.
I am at A Real Girl on Twitter and at a.real.girl on Instagram. I don't spend a ton of time on Twitter or Facebook, so if you need to reach me, just email me at info@emptyset.com.
That'll work. You can find more about StorySmack at facebook.com/StorySmack. We don't have an actual webpage for the series. We just run it over Facebook. And I'll be honest, I do a terrible job at updating the information there. So if you just are watching You can watch this every other week at the addresses I just mentioned, facebook.com/Scott Sigler, youtube.com/Scott Sigler, twitch.tv/Scott Sigler, and apparently LinkedIn now, but I'm not sure how that works.
In addition to StorySmack, we do a once weekly live stream called Sigler in Place. It's every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. We do it for just about an hour, and you can find it wherever you're watching this, and we hope you join us there too.
And we release an unabridged episode of one of my books, serialized full-length novels. You can get them every Sunday via iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, and more. Just go to scottsigler.com/subscribe. Sign up with your favorite podcatcher. That's a phrase that the kids used to use back in the day. The podcatcher. Sign up with your favorite podcatcher and listen to this voice talk to you every gosh darn Sunday. It's great.
Okay, so that is it for us. Please subscribe, follow us, hang out with us. What else are you doing? Not quite yet, unless you have a vaccine. Not too much. So come on and join us. And until then, do you have anything else, my friend?
No, I got all queued up. Rest. Until then, baby.
We will talk to you all real soon.
Kiss them goodbye.